Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. So we're finally going to dive back into the FC and start working on some of those improvements that we need to make. Right now I don't have everything I need to start one particular project. There's a bunch of little things that I could knock out now, so we're probably going to focus on that. It's New Year's Day and I need to get some dry ice to get the sound deadening off. And nothing's open today. The other thing I wanted to do was start building the wiring harness. I got these ditch work, or I don't know how to pronounce it, Dwetch. So I need the correct crimpers for the terminals. I've bought about 3 different types of crimpers for those terminals and none of them worked. I got one more coming. Hopefully it's the right one. It says it is, but so did all the other ones. But I'll get into that when we actually get that part. So one of the projects that we're gonna do today is figure out where everything's gonna be placed. A lot of things are gonna end up in the same spot, and I might have to do some improvements there. But like, I gotta figure out where under there I wanna mount the ECU. I gotta cut off a lot of those tabs and stuff like that and figure out a panel situation for just the ECU. The fuse box is probably going to go back in its location, but I need to put some riv nuts in the holes. I was using sheet metal screws before. Prefer to use riv nuts. So I'm going to put the relays over there on that hole over there. Alright, so let's dive into that real quick and let's start getting working on a lot of these little projects that need to get done. So I didn't really explain what I was trying to do here. So my plan is to mount the ECU right here. So we had to cut some of these tabs off or whatever, and I ground them flat. Might hit them with a wire wheel, but none of them are really sharp anymore. They're pretty flush. So what we need to do is go take the ECU off the ECU panel, and then we're gonna figure out how we're gonna mount this on here. So I think I like this ECU placement. The plugs will go in here and then probably wrap around and head right outside this hole over here through the firewall. But I think I have to cut this. There's a bottom stud right here. It almost is in the perfect spot, but I don't know, I don't like it being kind of cockeyed right there. So what I'm gonna do is cut it off, weld in a new stud here, and then over here on this side I'm gonna weld in a stud too. I'm gonna knock this sound deadening off and create a nice little bare metal spot so I can tack that weld or that stud in there. So and then that looks good to me. So alright, so I have these weld on studs. I got them in a couple different lengths, but I think this one's like a 1/2 inch, 12 mil or something like that. So we're just going to weld it on a little bit off of where the other one was. Okay. So yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with it. The placement's all right. I ended up doing all 3 studs because the top one was metric and I'm using 1/4-20 weld-in studs. So I just didn't want different hardware on the same thing. So it's kind of hard to find metric studs. I haven't been able to find them. If any of you guys know where to get some, let me know in the comments below. I'm pretty much stuck with the 1/4-20s for now. I'm pretty stoked. Good placement. That should be good to go. All right, so this is a PSI conversions harness. It's a pretty cheap wiring harness. It does really good. I've been using this for 4 or 5 years. But they have this fuse box over here, right? And this is how the ECU gets power. So essentially, you have your ignition wire over here, this red one, and then you also have your constant. So for ECU memory, so every time you start the car up, it doesn't have to kind of relearn and pull air and figure out the elevation and all that stuff, all the calculations that it needs to do. So that'll keep this thing happy. So we got to find a nice place to mount this real quick, and I'm thinking right there I might enlarge these holes a little bit and put make them like 1/4 inch, because they almost go on this 6 mil. So I'll use those 1/4 studs. I got some longer ones we'll use to mount this right here. I'm thinking right there, and then the wiring harness itself will kind of just sit up like this, wrapped around it, kind of like that for now. I mean, and this right here, all this wires right here, these are all for your, like your gauges and certain inputs or whatever. I don't use any of them, so I just kind of wrap them up and put them off to the side. Thought about just chopping them off, but as soon as I do that, I'll want to use them or something. So and then obviously ODB2 port right here, and usually I put this in the glove box, so that way it's nice and easy access and it's not down here getting kicked around. So I think, yeah, we'll cut this, make this all 1/4 over here. Ooh, that is some messy stuff, man. So I kind of changed my mind a little bit of where I wanted to mount it. So I want to mount it right about there. All right, so got the studs welded on, got that fuse block right there mounted. So, and I think it's all in a good spot. It's in a nice serviceable spot right there, especially with having a cage. You want anything under the dash, you want to make it really easy to access, or very accessible, because you're going to find yourself in some awkward positions if you don't. So that's another reason why we're putting the fuse box back there for the chassis and all that. So I'm able to actually get in through the hatch and service any fuses or relays or anything and make it really easy over there. But that fuse box has to be mounted right next to the ECU. I'm pretty happy with it. Came out pretty clean. I think next we're gonna work on the little plate that goes through the firewall right back in there. Yeah, I want to make a pass-through plate for this grommet right here on the harness. So we'll take all this stuff back out and start working on that plate. So all right, so the only hole saw I have is this 2-inch. Hopefully that is the exact size we need. So we're gonna make this plate out of some aluminum. Boy, look at that. It's actually a pretty good fit. So now we just need to make a template around this for the firewall. And then we'll cut out our design, file it all down, make it smooth, be in business. All right, so I made up this quick little template. I'm gonna use the cutoff disc and cut it. Wish I had something better to cut it with, but this is what we got. So this is kind of just a rough outline of what it's gonna look like. I'm gonna cut it, bring it in with the belt sander and kind of fine tune it later, but we're gonna cut big and so I ended up scrapping the first one. I ended up chewing it up pretty good, trying to drill one of these holes. It was a stupid decision, but I ended up making another one. This one came out a little bit better. But we still need to put some riv nuts on here, and I'll show you why here in a second. All right, so this is pretty much how the bracket's gonna go. I want to put the riv nut on the plate so that way I can thread into it from the back side, and then we'll also have this stud holding it on as well. So that was a nifty little trick. So I used this 3/8 drive impact together and used it to get in between there to actually get to the hole, because I couldn't, or to actually drill the hole, because I couldn't get the drill in around the other side between this cage beam right here and the firewall. There wasn't enough room. So nice little trick there, huh? All right, so for some of you guys who might not know what a riv nut is, so basically it's just a threaded rivet, and they come in all different kinds of stuff, or sizes, metric, standard, all that. And so here's the tool, and all you pretty much do is you're basically crimping. Let's put this on correctly. You're basically crimping a threaded insert on there, and it's as simple as that. It's fairly inexpensive. I think the worst part was probably the initial cost of the tool itself. I think I paid around $89 for this one through like Eastwood. And there we go. These are obvious. And these just pretty much thread in just like that. And there you go. So I'm gonna go install this and just make sure all the holes line up, because it's usually my luck that they don't line up. So, all right, so we ran the harness through. Everything seems to be hunky-dory. It was a little off center, but it ended up working, so I'm not too upset about that. But overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's a lot better. Keep the wiring harness a little bit safer, and one less hole kind of in the firewall. I wanted to show you guys the final fit. So obviously we got the fuse box already mounted, we got the ECU mounted, and we also got that plate for the grommet. And all in all, I'm pretty stoked about it. Obviously right now it's not the prettiest, because we still got to get all the sound denting off, and then paint all this stuff and paint the whole inside. So we're just gonna have to suffer through the ugly a little bit until later, and it's just basically just bare metal and stuff. So all in all, pretty stoked with it. We're gonna move on to some other things. I went out this morning and picked up some dry ice, so we're gonna throw that on here real quick and let it sit for a little bit. Alright guys, I don't want to bore you guys with doing sound deadening removal, but I will kind of go over for some of you guys who don't know. So the way dry ice works on sound deadening is basically it's so cold that it shrinks the sound deadening at a much faster rate than say the metal, and that actually detaches the sound deadening from the metal, basically loosens the bond. So just a quick overview of why you use dry ice on sound deadening. It's way easier than like trying to chisel away. It's, you know, spend the 20-30 bucks that it costs to go get it. If you're planning on doing something like this, yeah, I'd definitely suggest going with that. But show you kind of where we're at. We're pretty much on the home stretch. So ended up getting the cubbies done, or the back seat holders. Working on the firewall now. I've got this like sheet metal piece kind of holding it up so I can get the dry ice up on the firewall. I'm not too worried about getting the sound deadening off the firewall. Some of it where I've already had to like remove it to weld and stuff like that. I want to get that stuff cleaned up. But overall, I mean, that sound deadening is not usually going to be visible, and plus it keeps some of the heat out of the engine bay from entering the cab, so that's actually nice. Like overall for this car, you know, with the V8 and stuff, I probably wouldn't have removed the sound deadening, but when I originally got the car, there was some sound deadening that had been removed. There were some areas that like maybe like a bottle of brake fluid got onto and turned it to like this gooey, nasty mess stuff. I would have preferred to keep the OEM sound deadening in here and just painted over it. But when it's all patchy, it looks really nasty. So I just wanted to make it kind of uniform. And then, you know, so this isn't the final product. We'll definitely have to hit it with the wire brush on the grinder, or sand it and try to get a lot of this stuff off, but the majority of it's off, which will make life much easier overall once we get to the paint stage. All right, so with a project like this, it's going to be a long, tedious process. We're not going to make a lot of ground fairly quickly because, you know, it's just literally chipping away at all the small things, and things take a lot longer when you're doing this type of stuff, you know, like with the ECU placement and the fuse box placement and all that stuff. Mulling it over in your head takes a long time, and then how you're going to execute it takes even longer. So, you know, it's all part of the process. Doing all this prep work for paint, it's tedious. It's a tedious process. You know, it's just something that you have to kind of go through. And this is a prime example. Like, it doesn't look like we made much progress because it doesn't look, it actually looks maybe even worse than when we started. Somebody once said, you know, you got to fight through the ugly to get to the good, and it's kind of what we're doing right now. We're gonna keep pushing through the ugly part of this and move on, and hopefully we'll yield much better results and overall in the end. So on this one, we're pretty much out of time. I need to start getting this video edited and get it out to you guys. So I want to say thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.